Welcome to Combat Theory Presents, a bi-weekly podcast about all things martial arts, fight science, and combat sports. Your host is Paul, the Evil Professor Antonelli, and our newest episode starts right now.
Hey, Rich, what's up, man? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Paul?
I am very good, and I'm going to look at my show notes real quick, of course. We're coming to you live. Well, not live, but we're alive right now.
We're live currently.
This will not be live. That's probably not the best way to say that, but we're here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Start off by apologizing about my kind of raspy voice. I have once again found a way to lose my voice over a fun weekend here in Myrtle Beach. So we just completed the East Coast Classic, the Fall East Coast Classic for IKF. And we are at the Landmark Hotel in, like I said, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I don't know if you've ever been to the Landmark Hotel, if you guys are listening or watching at home. It's actually a really nice hotel right here on the beach. Their claim to fame is they have like 2 lazy rivers and a bunch of hot tubs, and it's a pretty cool little beachy resort kind of experience.
Yeah, I grew up in Cocoa Beach, and this is like a nicer, more touristy version of that. This hotel in particular is really nice.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool hotel. It's been an interesting weekend. Obviously, I worked most of the weekend as an official. And you've kind of had like a amuse-bouche, if you will, of different experiences.
Yeah.
On Friday, you were working as an official, as a judge.
Good word.
Saturday morning.
Words.
Thank you. I may have pronounced it right, may have not. Friday, you worked as a judge. Saturday morning, you did some IKF, PKB work, PMT work as a referee, as an official.
Mm-hmm.
And then Saturday night, you had your fighter, Becco, fought on the card Saturday night on the PM show. That was fun.
Good times.
Do you want to brag now, or do you want to wait till later in the podcast?
I say we go like sequential.
You want
chronological order.
You want to hit chronological order.
Build suspense.
Okay, that's fair, I guess. I'm not gonna argue that. So obviously we have so much stuff that I want to go over from the weekend, and I kind of want to do like a recap and just talk about some stuff that I saw, some stuff that you saw, and just some general thoughts from like an official's position and from like a coaching position, and just some of the conversations that you and I have been having kind of like now that it's Sunday, we're filming, and it's like kind of the last day. We're done with the event, and kind of give like a debrief or kind of like a wind down kind of talk from it. So
Yeah, you showed me a little bit of your show notes, so I know of what we're going to talk about.
You have a general idea of where we're headed.
Normally, I take a lot of notes for this show, but this time we're on the beach scene. We worked real hard this week, and I'm being a little more relaxed.
All right, so
hence the shades.
You do seem very, very relaxed right now. I, in fact, I've eaten way too much ice cream this weekend, so that's something. I'm maybe mildly lactose intolerant, which I don't.
You're finding out now.
I think I already knew, but I also love ice cream, so that's how life is. A couple of people I wanted to shout out first. Of course, Johnny Davis, IKF Vice President of Operations. He's, the person that's put these events on. He's given us really an amazing opportunity. And what I really love about Johnny is that he is actively working to push our sport, the sport of Muay Thai, the sport of kickboxing, and really, in a lot of ways, he's trying to create a pathway so that pro Muay Thai fighters, pro kickboxers can, work their way up in the United States without having to go to, maybe other places, which is a conversation you and I kind of had yesterday, I think, where we were talking about, like, it is hard to build a career in the United States as a professional kickboxer, and it's even hard as an amateur kickboxer to kind of build that career. Then I also wanted to give a moment to shout out Impact mouth guards. They were here all weekend. We're wearing an Impact mouth guard shirt.
Shout out to them.
Shout out to Impact mouth guards, guys.
And not only do they have great mouth guards, they have great merch. I was checking out their merch.
They do have good merch, yeah.
And I used their tape.
You'd use their tape, yeah.
So Becco didn't land any punches. We'll get to that. But his hands were protected.
They were taped from Impact tape. And guys, we're not like Impact does not pay us to say these things. They're a really good company. If you purchase something on the Impact website, whether that's a custom mouth guard, a t-shirt, tape for your fighters, and you use combat code Combat Theory, all one word, 2 T's, guys, Combat Theory, just like my shirt, you do get a pretty significant discount when you purchase stuff on the website.
I used it myself.
Yeah, thank you. And it absolutely helps us.
Very
and guys,
helpful.
the cool thing about Impact Custom Mouth Guards is that really for the first time in the game, you can get a truly custom molded mouthpiece created in a lab for around $100 if you use our discount code. When I was coming up, and I'm sure when Rich was coming up, if you wanted a true, like, proper fitted custom mouth guard, that was hundreds of dollars.
I was going to say the average one I remember seeing was like $250.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I want to say it was $500-$600.
Wow.
You'd have to go to a dentist. The dentist would have to do the
That's
mold.
right, yeah.
They'd send it out. You had to pay the dentist. You had to pay for the mold. If you wanted a design, you're at like $600-$700. Today, you go on the Custom Mouth Guards website, Impact Custom Mouth Guards, and obviously we'll put the website in the show notes, but you can go on there and literally they send it to you in the mail. You do the mold yourself. They have a bunch of tutorials. It's really easy to do. You send it back in probably about 3 or 4 weeks. You have a really properly fitting mouth guard with any cool design you want. So
Yeah.
I know that sounds like an advertisement, but it's really, honestly, guys, something we'll talk about later is, how important it is to have a mouth guard. And then third, I think one of the best experiences about coming to these events is all of the officials, meeting the people from other teams. I had such great conversations with the officials this weekend. I had such great conversations with coaches and fighters from other teams. It is a really awesome weekend because, all these people that are like-minded are kind of stuck in a hotel for a weekend, and you really have these amazing opportunities to have lunch and dinner and kind of get to know other teams and get to know other coaches and kind of like pick each other's brains, and it's a lot of fun, man.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like I imagine it's like a typical business convention, except we just punch and kick each
Except
other.
we're hitting each other. Like I always say, like we solve our business disputes with violence.
Sure do.
Which is a weird thing in our industry, but that is not unheard of. So I think I've done all of the homework. I feel really, really lucky. I always feel very lucky to be a part of these experiences. It's work. It is hard work, and there's some heartbreak always with fighters. Whenever I see a fighter lose, even if I don't know the fighter, I always feel a little bit like I'm always a little disheartened,
Yeah, the work that goes into it.
Yeah.
And if you don't get favorable results, it's hard to see.
Yeah. I think that's it's, but I can't name anything else like it. So, all right. So we're going to have a little fun with this first one. And I'm going to go with, what do you think is the best choice for a walkout fight song?
So I've explained to you before, I listen to a lot of different type of music.
Sure.
And I'm one of those people who love listening to music that's not popular.
Okay.
I like finding an artist that has like less than 1,000 plays.
All right.
So a lot of my walkout songs have been very niche songs that people don't know.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really hype the crowd up.
No, I think
believe it or not.
that is a horrible, horrible mistake.
I'm also going to agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a smart idea.
Do you remember what your first walkout song was?
Yeah, so this was probably when the audience was most hype. The DJ said he only had mostly rap music, so I said, let's go with Shimmy Shimmy Ya by ODB.
Okay.
And the crowd loved it.
I bet.
Yeah, and I love that song too, personally. It's one of my favorites. But that was probably my best walkout as far as crowd support goes.
I feel like when you do a walkout song, you have to go nostalgia. I feel like if you go 80s, I feel like if you go 90s, if you go super popular song, if you get the audience hyped. Like, I remember from years ago, some fighters that came out to very hyped songs, and I don't necessarily remember how their fight was, but I remember their walkout.
Yeah.
Which
sure.
I think that, everybody likes your, if you have like a niche song you like, that's cool. But me personally, I would rather see like Aqua's Barbie Girl. I think that would be better. And we've seen guys go out to these.
Oh yeah.
These fun like remember the Russian bear from the jungle used to walk out to
I think it was girls just want to have
Just
fun.
girls just want to have fun,
Yeah.
and I always thought that was like
It's entertaining. It
that's
gets you
where
pumped.
it's at.
Yeah.
Yeah, people got it's provocative. It gets the crowd excited.
Shout out Roman Fedorov,
Yeah,
the Russian bear.
Yeah, the Russian bear. That's the name I was looking for. All right. Now a serious question, Rich. Amateur fighting, amateur kickboxing, amateur Muay Thai, typically 3 rounds, 2 minutes a round. How do you feel? Do you think that's enough time to establish a fight?
Yeah, I do. Again, we're talking amateur, so the idea as an amateur is it prepares you for pro.
Sure.
So if we're doing like pro rounds, which are 3-minute rounds, you're more likely going to take a lot more damage over time, where amateur is more of like a developmental stage to kind of learn how to do the game. Obviously, you build your experience that way. In the sense of like, as a fighter, is it enough time to do work? There's a sense of urgency that you have to kind of operate sometimes. But if you know how to play the game, keep your distance, you can kind of mitigate some of that unnecessary damage just from blasting for 2 minutes straight.
Do you think that there would be... All right, let's say that, an amateur fight is 6 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that 2 3-minute rounds, would be more advantageous? I mean, it's the same amount of fight time, right? So it's 2 3-minute rounds instead of 3. If you have a draw after the first 2, you go to a third round.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thought. I think probably benefits some fighters over others.
Sure.
I know a lot of people love the idea of taking breaks and getting the advice from the corner, making the adjustments.
I could see that.
Yeah. So there's pros and cons to both sides.
I could see that.
I'm partial to the idea of like one long round.
Really?
Yeah, I'm more of a cardio based fighter. I don't need a break. I can keep going. But other people, more explosive type athletes, they really rely on that break. They game plan for that break.
You would be down for a 1 6-minute round.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Sign me up. Not anymore. Back in the day.
Unless the guy from Tough Enough. You'll still take him 1 6-minute round?
Yeah, 1 6-minute round.
Okay,
Let's make that happen. Keep bringing it up because I'm going to forget.
If you don't get that joke, guys, you got to go back and watch a previous episode.
Yeah, it's a deep cut from our episode.
Yeah, that is for sure. One of the things I thought was so wild from this weekend was we were talking about like body types and how it's so hard to explain to a non-fight a non-fight fan or a non-fight enthusiast or someone that's not in our game how what you initially expect body-wise is not what you're going to get always fight-wise. I don't know, maybe I'm not explaining that well.
Well, let's do like case in point. What brought it up was we were watching two fighters.
Yeah.
And one fighter was what most people would imagine looks like.
This man was an Adonis.
Yeah.
You could see every muscle in his body.
Mm-hmm.
He was shredded.
Yeah.
Like I thought about maybe super gluing a photo of my face on his body and sending it to my friends to tell them I've been working out.
It wouldn't match. It wouldn't look right.
No, I'm with you on that.
And then the other guy, not to say that he was like
he
off
just
the couch.
looked like, kind of a beach bum, if you will.
Yeah, one guy's chiseled, the other guy's more rounded. Let's say that.
He looked like he enjoyed eating on the weekends.
Yeah. He didn't cut a ton.
No.
So, and then, most people, again, if you're doing the eye test, you're probably thinking the Jack Chisel guy's probably going to smoke them. Not necessarily the case.
Yeah, but that's only something that if you're in our industry, you understand.
And you're not surprised anymore. I think back in the day, even not that long ago, people still had that perception that a guy that looks more athletically built should be a dominant fighter.
Yeah.
But I think that has time and time again proven not always to be the case.
I don't want to talk anything bad about working out or conditioning because I think that's fundamental. I have a degree in strength and conditioning essentially. But I think one of the things that is, so fundamentally true when you're a martial artist, when you're training in the gym, and when you first start off, you see the guy that comes in that's yoked, that's jacked, that's in great shape, and you're like, oh, I don't want to train with that guy. He's gonna be too good. And then very quickly you discover like that is just not the case, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm more worried about the dude that comes in that's like lanky and thin and looks like an assassin. I'm like,
I'm even worried about like a guy that's very short and like,
stout.
Yeah. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to throw overhands. That's
Fair.
So, like, I still know what they're going to throw, but that means I still have to defend these big, wide, powerful shots.
Yeah.
So there's always like a give and take with every body type.
Fair.
So don't ever judge a book by its cover. Judge them by the film study.
Fair. Good point. Hashtag film study.
Yeah.
Hashtag combat theory while you're there, if you could please
Keep
Vince.
adding that into.
Yeah, I keep trying. No one's doing it, so that's what it is. No one's doing film study either. Rich. Okay, this weekend we saw so many people. We had, 40, 50 fights on Saturday. We had fights Friday night. We had PKB fights all morning. There was a lot going on. We had multiple rooms that we were working in. When it comes to a ring sport, there does seem to be a lot of different kind of ways that fighters enter the ring.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a preference?
No, I do not.
You do not care?
No, just don't trip.
Do not fall.
Please don't.
It does seem like about half the gyms, they go through the middle.
Yeah.
They go through in between the bottom two and the top two ropes, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's typically my preference. But then you also see guys that, they have their trainer press the rope down and they jump over top of the rope. Some are tall enough they can step over top of the rope.
They kind of like saddle it like a horse.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that at all.
No?
No, I hate it. I hate it for multiple reasons. One, because every once in a while somebody just completely fucking eats it over the process.
Mm-hmm.
Like they jump and they land on their face.
Or they trip.
Or they just look foolish.
I watched a video on the internet long ago. A guy tried to do it like saddle style, and he got caught up, fell out of the ring.
Oh my God.
Again, that's why you don't want to trip. Is one, you might hurt yourself before the fight.
Yeah.
Two, you look like a fool. Now you might.
How are you gonna recover from
your
that? Your
focus might be a little off.
Yeah.
Now you're a little embarrassed.
And I also think it's one of those things where it's like sometimes coaches and fighters do it, but they've never practiced it together.
Mm-hmm.
So they just look like they don't. Like maybe the coach is trying to explain what to do and the fighter's not getting it.
It's not uncommon too. A lot of people, their first full contact fight in a ring, that's their first time
in a ring,
getting into a ring.
Yeah, that absolutely. There's a lot of gyms that don't have a ring, which I get it. What's a ring cost? $5 grand, 10 grand. Like there's a lot of money for a gym,
and it takes up space.
Space, right?
Yeah, I know some gyms they have their we do it this way, and I know it's more particular in Thai. They have their cultural reasons.
Yes, I looked this up because I say this all the time. I am a Muay Thai coach. I am a striking coach. I know that you refer to yourself as a stand-up coach. I have been teaching and involved in Muay Thai my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a super traditionalist. Obviously, I'm an American. I've lived in America my whole life. I did not train in Thailand. I was trained by...
You're not Thai?
No. I was trained by Thais. But I was also trained by Americans, and I was trained by Americanized Thais as well. So, typically, obviously, I talk about this a lot when it comes to teeps. In Buddhism, the head is considered like the most holy part of the body, right? And the feet are considered to be the dirtiest part of the body, right? So you always want to keep your head up high, good posture, right?
Yeah.
So apparently, a lot of Thais go over the top rope because they don't want to put their head down beneath the ropes to come back through. They feel like it's not good for disrespectful, not good for spiritual reasons, whatever. So they jump over the top. I'm going to mispronounce this. The headgear,
Makong.
Yeah, if it's blessed by a Buddhist monk, that's another thing that you don't want to put underneath the rope. So typically if you're wearing one of those, you want to jump over top.
Gotcha. I
also found out that traditionally the fighter is never supposed to touch that. The coach is supposed to put that on and take that off. So it is, interesting. I don't know a lot about that. I also discovered today that traditionally women go underneath the bottom rope in Muay Thai. They're not supposed to go over the top of the rope.
Yeah.
I had no idea that even was a thing either. And I think that's one of the great things about going to these events because you get to see all these other gyms and what they do, and you kind of get to, if you're smart, you then go do some research and find out, because even though you don't necessarily do it or agree with it, I think it's very important to understand the different reasonings for it, you know?
Mm-hmm. I personally, as you know, am very Americanized, and I do not hold any of those superstitions. Not that I dislike them. I think that's very cool. I just, again, I'm very practical. I try to base everything on logic. We're going to go in between the two ropes because that's the easiest to swing your legs through.
Fair.
And
I get sometimes
less room for error.
I'm kind of clumsy. I've even gotten a little stuck coming between the two ropes before. So
I hit my head on the rope last night.
if I was going to jump over the top, that might be the end.
Ooh, I would never.
You know what I'm saying? Like I'm going to pull an Achilles tendon or something.
Even though it sounds bad, I'm kind of digging this bottom rope idea. Just kind of like a pro wrestler roll through.
Slide underneath.
Yeah.
You ever seen the video of Vince McMahon where he's running up to the ring and dives into the bottom ring?
Oh yeah.
And he tears both his
that's awful.
He tears both his quad muscles and he can't stand up.
Jesus.
That's a great. Go look at that up on YouTube. It's amazing.
Okay.
That's a fun video.
That's my homework for tonight.
Yeah, I actually have a real homework tonight, unfortunately. All right. With that being said, obviously, your fighters, do they seal the ring when they go in?
No. Again, I don't have that like traditional background, so I would just be lying. I'd be posing if I told someone to go seal the ring, and this is why we do it.
Sealing the ring, for those that are listening or watching that don't know what that means, the most simple, basic way is that once the fighter enters, they go to each of the corner posts and then come back to their corner.
They tend to keep their hand on the rope, it seems, along the way.
Yeah, I think they do a blessing in each corner, and then they come back. You know, I guess to be honest with you, I just never got that education.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's interesting to me because I never did get that education. But it also sometimes feels really uncomfortable when the fighter goes in to do that, but then they're not like 100% sure. Like they get halfway and then they run into like the other corner, and instead of them just going around them
or something,
they cameraman, they just kind of like abandon it halfway. If you go in and fight, just have a plan of what you're going to do and just kind of I walk around. But I think this also goes back to you need to get comfortable in the ring. And if you're planning to seal the ring, or you're planning to jump over the top rope, or you're planning to go between the middle ropes, or whatever you're planning to do, one, communicate that with your coach. Communicate that with your team so that we're all on the same page. Two, if you cannot physically practice that, which I feel like you probably can, even if you don't have a ring, you could just make a square somewhere and do that. At least visualize what you're going to do, and then visualize what happens if there's a cameraman or there's a corner or there's a referee or something in the way of that. You know, I try to just get out of the way when they go to do that, but some people don't. So, you know, like, be aware of that, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big fan of practicing every little thing. Again, advice, if you don't have a ring in your gym, reach out to a gym that does. Can we do, just schedule a session over there. Yeah. Get your reps in. Even if it's a handful of reps, it really goes a long way to know how to enter a ring and exit a ring. I'll tell you what, personal story, my very first MMA fight, I went up the steps. I didn't check out the ring before the fight or anything. So I get called out to the fight, shimmy, shimmy, y'all plays. I walk up the steps. The steps are uneven. The lengths of each step was different. So I tripped. I tripped into the ring. And I laughed, and I dropped my mouthpiece.
Oh,
and I laughed it off, ha, ha, ha. But I was very hyped and serious for a moment, and then I tripped, and then now I'm, like, joking with my coach.
Yeah.
Kind of takes you out of the fight. So, again, you got to really prepare for it. I heard great advice on that. That's why a lot of fighters like to crawl into the ring. Less chance of tripping.
All right. That's interesting.
Yeah, I always thought, like, why would they do that? They look like such weirdos. But it's like a more controlled... You get in there, there's no slipping.
It does look a very, from a cage perspective, it does always look very like cat-like or predator aggressive.
I think it checks the boxes in a lot of ways.
Okay.
One way, it's really safe.
Never really thought about that, but maybe this is why we do the podcast. Maybe so people
come up with new ideas,
stuff,
inspire.
How important do you feel like crowd support is? Because this weekend there were some fighters there were some teams that you could clearly tell that it was maybe just them and a coach. And then there was other teams where you could tell that like they had brought a lot of people with them to watch the fights, to support them. How important do you think crowd support is?
I think we touched on this a bit on the judging episode.
Okay.
And in theory, a judge should not be swayed by the crowd.
Okay.
But in reality, we are humans, and maybe there is some subconscious effect when we hear noise to movements that makes us think of them as more important. I can't say I've ever been swayed by a crowd, but I can't speak for every judge. And maybe I had been swayed, and again, maybe it was subconscious. But I think it's huge. I think it's big for the fighter. It's a confidence thing if you have the louder group of people cheering for you. That's why it's such a big deal when you know a fighter's going to a country they're going to get booed in, because it's such a different mindset than when you have a room full of people cheering.
Yeah, I think that it is one of those things where I think for me, I think it's one of those things where it definitely helps. I think it definitely helps to have friends and family there to some extent. But I also think that to some extent, it is one of those things where it can be a lot of pressure that you don't need. I kind of like the idea when you're debut fighting, it's you and your coach and maybe your team, but it's not necessarily your family or your friends, not people that like you're going to worry about watching you make mistakes or whatever, you know. I do think that in a big fight, it helps. You know, if I hit you and the whole crowd goes wild, it definitely helps my morale. I think it also makes the judges kind of look up and pay attention, you know. It is an interesting thing, but I think that you as a fighter, you have to learn how to fight when the whole crowd supports you. And you also have to learn how to fight when the whole crowd hates you.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those two experiences, it's very hard to build yourself an amateur career.
Yeah, I agree. Again, that's kind of the idea that I try to, if I'm developing a fighter, sometimes fighters come to you pre-developed in a way.
Sure.
But if you're developing a fighter, yeah, I agree. I like a smaller show. I'm glad they exist still. If every show was a big show,
it's a lot.
That's a lot to take in on your first couple. So I like, put them on a smaller show, less higher stakes. I advise, as you do, maybe just have a couple teammates there. I don't know what their relationships with their family, but, a lot of people get very emotional when their parents are around or their grandparents or, if I know for me, having my mom at my rugby matches was not beneficial.
Okay.
So going into fighting, I was like, I'm never going to tell her when I'm fighting.
I was cornering a fighter one time in a pretty big fight. And after the first round, he got beat up a little bit. And I'm trying to get, his attention and try to explain to something. And he's kind of looking around, he's just not there. And I'm trying to get his attention. I kind of tell him what I need to tell him. And then he goes out there and gets beat up the second round and comes back in and he starts looking around again. And I'm like, yo, what is it, your deal right now? And he's like, do you know if my girlfriend's here?
Nice.
And I was like, yeah, no, I don't. I have no idea. But I know that you just took a 2-round beating.
Yeah.
And now I need you to go out
there. You better
and,
hope she's
and,
not here
yeah,
watching
and
this.
Pay attention, my man. He was so worried about whether or not his girlfriend had showed up on time.
He was eating.
Yeah, that he's taking hits looking into the audience.
That's great.
Big
mistake.
Long story short, let's just say he didn't win that fight.
Yeah. Yeah, again, you should have the experience. We were talking about this a little bit. If you're competing and you're looking to do it long term, but you don't have the desire or the want to perform in front of a crowd, if that's not part of like, oh, I wish fighting was just me and my opponent. Like it is an entertainment sport. There's a performance.
This is show business.
Yeah, this is performance aspect. You win based on your performances, how stunning you do them, how you act during it. That's all important.
I mean, in the same way that I can't tell you how often I'll say to fighters, hey, I went to, share your post and I can't, like your profile is private on social media. And they're like, yeah, I don't really want a public profile. well, my man, you're essentially becoming a public figure. You're trying to be a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
You need follows. You need highlight reels. You need watch. You need view time. You know, because when you go from every single level, you need sponsors. You need people that are going to support you. You need people that are going to buy tickets at your shows. You need people to show up. It's like having a punk rock band.
Yeah.
I need people to come to the damn show, man.
Mhm.
You got to sell tickets. You know, like I remember, and we don't do this as much anymore because of the internet, but I remember back in the day when you were fighting and you had to sell your own tickets.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, you got to sell this many tickets to be on the show.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really do that so much anymore.
Fighters are easier to find now.
Yeah, but we used to. You have to like.
Yeah,
You
no,
know?
there's that grind aspect to it of building a fan base, and some guys are great at it and not that great at fighting, and then there's guys who are great at fighting but not that great at the fan base part.
Yeah, and if you're not, you need to find somebody that can do that for you.
Exactly. Get a manager.
Yeah, figure that out, guys.
Yeah.
Please.
Don't come to me because I don't know how to do it.
Fair. Sorry, I'm adjusting.
They don't see it, but there's a lot of gadgets in the
A lot of stuff going on down here. You know, hopefully this all works out. If not, it'll be
It's good practice.
I guess. What is so we could do this two ways. We could say what were the best crowd chants or cries or yells or advice that you heard this
Quotes
weekend,
from the crowd.
or you could just tell me what the best things that you've ever heard from a crowd.
Well, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah. Somebody this weekend was screaming in a fight where it was two females, make her suffer. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, make her suffer what? You know what I mean? Like the rent's going up. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like another guy this weekend was yelling, chase her, chase him.
Chaser.
Like, what? I don't want it. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, I always love, one of them that I always love is like, it's like a mom or a girlfriend or an aunt, someone of that nature.
Sure, I'm with you.
And they're screaming so loud, it's usually repetitive, like "let's go" or "get him," and it's louder than the coach.
Get her, baby.
Yeah, louder than the coach the entire time. Saying things that probably is getting under their son's skin.
Why is my mom yelling?
Yeah, like shut up, mom. Like God, let me do my thing.
I remember I went to one of the first Combat Night shows I went to. Combat Night's a fight organization in Florida. And we keep trying to get the CEO to come on the show, but he's got a very busy schedule. And I know we keep promising a guest. We will one day get a guest.
Maybe a couple.
I mean, let's get wild. I was at a Combat Night show when I first moved to Orlando, and it was back when it was at OLE, the Orlando Live Events or whatever. And it's kind of like I don't know how would you describe that? Like an auditorium style?
Yeah, like it's like stadium seating
Yeah.
up this way. You have the stage area up front.
Yeah, we were pretty far up at the top, kind of hanging out because the fighter dressing rooms were all the way at the top. And then you come out and you could kind of sit at the top of the auditorium and kind of see the fights from a distance. And there was a lady that was maybe 2 rows down from me. I think her son was fighting, and she was so far away, but she was yelling as loud as she could, hit him with that backhand. And it was just like a repetitive, hit him with that backhand, hit him with that backhand, hit him with that backhand.
Yeah.
And one, I don't think that he could even hear her.
Right.
And two, I don't know that it made sense in the context of the fight.
Here's what I love about the sport, though, and I also want to add this. I don't like being in the crowd.
Okay.
I'm really good at drowning it out. Typically, at fights these days, anyways, I'm ringside or on backstage. I'm doing something with the show, so I don't really get to interact with the crowd too much.
Sure.
But it really is just so distracting and so like so not what like she probably knows not to do that. Her son's probably like, please be quiet in the crowd. But the sport stirs so much emotion. You know it's different. We're fans of the sport. We love watching fighters fight. But when you know the fighter,
it's hard. It's hard.
Stuff just takes over.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I had
I just recently watched the fight. A friend of mine. I watched the whole card leading up to it. You know, it's fights. It's great.
Yeah.
Not emotional. They fight, I'm on their feet. I'm yelling at the TV. I'm pumping my fist.
Yeah.
I'm saying things like, hit him with that backhand. Hit him with that backhand.
I had a fighter that trained with me kind of loosely, kind of helped out, had been around with me for a while, and I had at one point tried to like poach her almost and be like, you should come train with us, like, because she was kind of bouncing between a couple gyms. And
You poaching students, Paul?
yeah, I tried that at one point, and she decided not to train with us, but I've still followed her career.
Yeah.
And recently she was fighting MMA and got clipped and dropped in the first round. She was doing really well, and she got clipped in the round. And even though I have not talked to her probably for a couple of years, I was still like a little like, oh, that kind of hurts.
Sure.
It is an emotional game. I get that.
You get invested, and that's why we do have like fighters that we're lifelong fans of.
Yeah.
Kind of to finish up on that. Again, I'm good at tuning it out, but there was one fight as a coach. My fighter's stepfather was in the crowd, and it was a title fight. It was a long, grueling fight, and in the last couple rounds, his stepfather, all he screamed drunkenly over the barricade, "Eye of the tiger, eye of the tiger, eye of the," like the whole 3-minute round, every round, eye of the tiger, eye of the tiger. I eventually got out of the corner, and I was like, please go sit down. Please, you got to let me coach. You have to let me coach.
Was Eye of the Tiger not your strategy?
No,
No,
if we had like a code word, Eye of the Tiger,
maybe
maybe
it
some
made
system
sense.
that we
Yeah.
operate in called Eye of the Tiger. But yeah, that was not the case.
I don't know. I had a buddy. I had some buddies that got drunk and went to a fight, and one of my friends kept yelling, "Put the cheese in the pocket."
Mm.
And later they were like, what was the deal there? And they were like, I don't know. I just wanted to yell something.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I guess you got that.
I do know people who, British people have cheese in the pocket. They have pocket cheese.
Are you making this up?
I wish I was. And I might be.
What is pocket cheese?
Like, they want a snack for later. So they'll leave the house with like those little cheddar bricks. You know what I'm talking about?
Wrapped in something?
Yeah, it's like wrapped in plastic. They sell it as a snack cheese.
What is it called? Pocket cheese?
Well, they call it pocket cheese. It's different brands. If I'm wrong, British people, I'm sorry. But I know British people that do this. They have pocket cheese.
Maybe you have one British friend that's just weird, and you have generalized all British people are walking around with pocket cheese. All
I
right.
don't hate it. I love it.
Here's a serious one. Do you have an idea or a strategy? What do you think the best way is to recover from a groin shot? Because I've got nothing. I've got nothing for you on this.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Well, I don't know if there's any scientific evidence to what I'm going to say.
All right.
But I always, first and foremost, learn to fight through it.
Fair.
When guys get kicked in the nuts at my gym, in a class or a session, whatever the case is, I don't, unless it was a really bad one, they obviously just fall over and, go through the whole, like, rolling on the ground. But if it's like, come on, man, you fight through it. You kick them in the nuts, fight through it, because in my experience, I kick a lot when I compete.
Okay.
So when you kick a lot, you expose that target. So if they kick while you kick, there's a good chance you're going to get kicked there. On top of that, there's a good chance the ref's not going to see it because there's just legs up in the air.
Fair.
So many times I would get kicked 2 or 3 or 4 times before a warning is even issued.
Yeah.
So I learned very on. It seems less these days. It seems like fighters are able to kind of manipulate the refs more. But back in the day when I competed, the refs just keep fighting. So I try to pass it on in the class. If it does happen, don't kick people in the nuts. We're not intentionally trying to practice this. But when that situation comes up, your first thought should be, let me fight through this. If I can get through the pain and continue to win the round or do the drill, when it comes up in a fight, I can fight through it.
Yeah, I understand that position. I will say the thing that I dislike the most is when a fighter feels like they got fouled, and instead of defending themselves at all times, which is what we say over and over again, defend yourself at all times, they start to adamantly protest towards the referee or to the other fighter.
Yeah.
But the other fighter's still trying to fight. so they end up taking shots that they shouldn't have to take. Well, they're whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's, I don't want to say humorous, but I think it's so weird that when people do get hit in the nuts and we call for a timeout, that every one of them has like a different like strategy of what they think is a good idea.
There's the bounce.
The bounce. The bounce one I don't. It's like they're trying to shake it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like somehow the ball has gone inside and that shake is going to let the ball come back
use
out.
Gravity to.
No, I don't think that's how that works.
Yeah. There's the stomping. Guys will get up and stomp around. Again, I think it's a similar theory as like maybe a testicle has gone up and then they need to kick it out.
I'm 100% sure that that's not what happened. I don't think that that's what's going on.
I will say the worst thing you could probably do is what your body wants to do, which is keel over, kind of like hold yourself, be bent over. I do advise just stand up. Again, it's kind of the idea of fighting through it is go against your body's natural reaction, which is probably, really trying to protect you.
Wasn't Crazy Horse's position that jiu-jitsu didn't work because you could just stand up?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying just stand up.
Stand up,
okay.
yeah. Mind over matter.
Yeah.
Strength over jiu-jitsu.
I don't know. I don't know that anyone's ever done any form of research to tell you what's good there. I do think it's funny.
There's an expert in the world. Somewhere in the world.
Nut shots.
Yeah.
One time I saw a coach like basically bear hug a guy
Mm-hmm.
and then try to like
shimmy him.
Shake him out. Like shake his balls out. And I was like, I don't think that's he was like he was trying to give the guy the Heimlich maneuver.
Yeah.
But just kind of shake
instead
him.
of like getting something out of the throat.
It was trying to get it back out the like inguinal canal.
Oh boy.
And I was like, I don't think that that's what happened.
Yeah, I don't know the best answer to it, but I always, again, my guys are told to, if you can help it, just like a liver shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it hurt.
It hurts.
Can you keep going? Try to keep going. If you absolutely have to take the knee or your body just reacts that way, now your job is to breathe, recover, get back to either the 8 count.
I don't know that I should say this, but I'm going to say this. I did ask the ringside doctor this weekend about it, and he said, I certainly know that me going in the ring doesn't help. And I was like,
I agree. I always
fair.
I
don't know, I think early on when I was refereeing, a guy got hit in the nuts at PMT.
Mm-hmm.
I called in the medic, and the medic said to him, do you still have both of them? And the guy went, yeah. And the medic's like, not much I can do now. And I was like, well, that's fair.
Was that my medic? Was that my buddy
medic,
Rob?
But he's not wrong.
Yeah.
He's not wrong.
Shout
what are
out
you going to do?
Yeah.
Like, he was like, are they both there? And the guy was like, yeah. And he's like, all right, not much I can do. Take your time, I guess.
That's great. I love that.
I mean, somebody needs to do some research and get back to me and tell me what is the best strategy for
That's
this.
what we're here for. We're trying to kick up a movement. We're trying to get more information for our sport.
Can we talk briefly about Becco's fight now?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to give us what your play-by-play thoughts are?
Yeah. I mean, so just the way tournaments work out and stuff. We wanted 2 fights.
Okay.
So we put him initially. We put him in a full rules Muay Thai division. No one signed up, so eventually you had to kind of like start moving fighters around. So we put him into unified rules.
Okay.
We were in a 3-person bracket. We would have not gotten the bye, so we would have gotten the 2 fights like we wanted.
Nice.
Which is great because we kind of missed out on opportunities to compete, so be like catching up in a way. Unfortunately, about a day or 2 before the weigh-ins, one of the competitors pulled out of the division. There's still opportunity for people to join the division, so we were hoping we got the 2 fights. We didn't. So we were left with our 1 opponent.
Okay.
And kudos to him for staying around and giving us an opportunity to compete.
Absolutely.
And the game plan on my end was I wanted to work a group of systems in which we're going to use in the future for a bunch of other fights that doesn't anyways. So I wanted to go a little while, maybe the second round. We looked to finish
some strategies. Yeah.
Start slow, finish strong in the rounds.
Okay.
Look for a big explosion. Basically, the fight starts. Opponent throws a leg kick. Becco pulls away. counters with 3-punch combo. Nothing really lands,
Yeah,
so
pretty
the
much
hand
missed,
wraps
yeah.
were useless. His opponent fires back with like a jab kick. The kick misses, and Becco fires with a head kick to follow, and that knocks his opponent down. 10 seconds later, the refs waving the fight off for a knockout, and that's how it went. So it was like a flawless victory. I think they counted at 18 seconds.
Because of the 10-second count.
Yeah, so it was 8 seconds, scored the head kick, and then
Yeah.
literally the first exchange.
So, two things. One, I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to superimpose that video. So if you guys are watching on the YouTube, you'll have seen that happen right now. But if you are on
I feel bad for giving you a word-for-word play-by-play if you're going to get to see the video.
Well, but if you're listening on the podcast, you won't be able to see that. But if you want to, I'm sure if you come on some of our social media, it will be available.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that I bring this up is that when Becco hit the head kick, obviously Anthony Bowie was the referee. He called down. He ordered the fighter to the neutral corner, but Becco was already moving towards the neutral corner, which allowed Anthony Bowie to complete his 10 count in 10 seconds or so, which is what a 10 count should be, 10 seconds. One of the things I see the most at the amateur level of fighting, guys, a standard referee command is fighter, neutral, corner. What that means is that you have to go to a corner that is not the blue corner or the red corner.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, the referee is going to point to the one that they want you to go to.
Yeah.
There are two. If you're really close to one, but your guy is, let's say, downed in that corner, I'm going to point to the other one.
Yeah.
So you have to walk to the other neutral corner. Once you start to walk, I can start my 8 count or eventually my 10 count if I need it. If you do not start to walk, or you walk to your corner, or you walk to the other fighter's corner, I cannot start my 8 count. I need to get you into your neutral corner, or at least headed towards your neutral corner. The other day, I gave a person probably an 8 count that lasted, let's say, 25 seconds.
Yeah.
Why? Well, it took me nearly 15 seconds to get the fighter that had just knocked the guy down into a neutral corner. He did not understand the command. He was yelling to the audience. He was yelling to his corner.
Essentially, he's disobeying the rules.
He's not following the rules, but more importantly, he's not letting me give his opponent, who he just knocked down, a proper 8 count. And what that's doing is that's giving his opponent more time to recover.
Correct.
Right? Because I don't have to start the 8 count on 1.
Mm-hmm.
There's been times where it takes me a moment or two. I start the 8 count on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But if I start my 8 count and then you move out of the neutral corner, I got to get you back into the neutral corner before I can continue my 8 count.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that so many amateur fighters struggle with this?
I think it goes into just like we were talking about entering and exiting the ring. They just don't have experience with it. They're probably told it. They know it because they watch fights, but they haven't done it themselves.
They haven't repped it.
Yeah, it's not in their instinct. So I'll tell you, obviously Becco's my student, and this is an important thing for me. I think it's massively important to have this ability as a kickboxer, a Muay Thai fighter, even an MMA guy. Even though there's not 10 counts in MMA, if a ref is commanding you to do something, say you're winning the fight, your guy is hurt, but now they need to take a break for whatever reason, well, you have a little bit of control of making that break shorter.
By hitting your neutral corner.
Just get there. You should know where it is. It's the two opposing corners or the opposite ends of where you and your opponent start.
With your students, with your fighters, do you teach them neutral corner as a strategy?
Yeah. So it's talked about, it's explained, and then we add it in. I was explaining to you one way that we do it is like if I'm holding mitts for a Becco, we are fortunate to have a ring. We get to use a ring for a lot of our mitt sessions. So I tell him, this is your corner. I'm going to start in this corner. So every round, we simulate starting in a corner.
Sure.
And as we're doing mitt work, say he lands like a combination I call, or he does something freestyle that's real dope that probably, quote unquote, would have been effective if it was a fight. I'll call down, and then I'll start counting out loud. The second he starts moving to a neutral corner is when I start counting out loud.
Sure.
Just like a ref would.
Sure.
So he knows I have to go to one of these two corners, not the ones that we started in. I have to go to, so he's already trained to quickly get there. But there's even more to it. Here's the secret. I learned this from Boss Ruin. One of the best tutorials, anyone, probably still to this day, it's so relevant, is if you get the big DVDs of Combat Sports by Boss Ruin. I got it when I was like 18.
Okay.
And one of the things he talked about in the ring generalship section is when you score a knockdown, don't cheer, don't jump, don't freak out. The best thing you can do is keep your eyes on your opponent and slowly walk backwards into the neutral corner.
Okay.
And the idea is that if your opponent's on the floor and they're getting up and they look up at you and you're slowly like a serial killer walking into the ring that you're supposed to, the corner you're supposed to, they're less likely to stand up because they don't want to get up.
They know you're coming right back.
They don't want to get up with a cold-hearted killer like that.
Yeah.
So I learned that. I passed it on, and Becco hit it perfectly.
Yeah.
in this
It
fight.
was almost like he moonwalked into the corner.
It was like one of our
Yeah.
footwork drills almost.
I think that is something that you as a coach, you need to be talking about with your fighters.
Mhm.
Is if they're fighting in a ringed sport,
Yeah.
even if it's MMA, there is a chance that a neutral corner call will happen. Same way, when you nail a sweep,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll go even further. If you are an MMA fighter, but you are a stand-up fighter, you're a striking fighter, or stand-up fighter, when you clip somebody in MMA,
Mm-hmm.
and you are a stand-up fighter, there's this weird tendency to try to then chase them into their guard.
Yeah.
And what that does is that allows them time to recover. There is a great value in clipping a dude, watching them drop, taking a step back, and telling them stand back up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the smoothest things that if you are a striker and when you clip somebody, instead of chasing in, you just step back, take one step back, and I tell the ref, make them stand up.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you drill in practice because I can't tell you how often I have seen guys, they're about to get a finish.
Yeah.
They clip the guy. He's seeing birdies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they fall into the guard for a minute and a half. When if they would have made that guy get back up, they probably just would have rocked him again,
100%.
finish the fight.
And again, you can drill this. You're doing a mid-session. Your fighter hits a nice clean combo. Hit a break fall.
Yeah.
If they charge you, right, hopefully they pass the feet. They do all the technical aspects they're supposed to.
Sure.
But if they charge you and they do, the silliness,
Yes.
give them burpees. Nope, that wasn't the response we wanted.
Yeah.
Tell them
Don't run into my guard.
Tell them to do exactly as you said. Take your 2 steps back, pull them up. The
Yeah.
referee must, if
Must.
you are the up
Must.
fighter in an
Must.
up-down position and you step back and invite them up, the referee is supposed to stand them up.
Has to stand them up.
And if they're on wobbly legs,
You're going to put them down again.
yeah.
And you're going to do the exact same thing
Mm-hmm.
until the fighter is called off.
Yeah.
Because 2 of those, 3 of those, they're not getting
Or you
it's
get a
not
highlight
fights
reel
over.
finish.
Yeah,
Because they're so
absolutely.
compromised. Yeah.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
I wanna go a little deeper into training with the neutral corner.
Yeah.
So that one example I used, you're holding mitts, maybe you're drilling, whatever, just something nice happens, a technical thing, give them their flowers, call it down. The other thing too is when we've talked about sparring and creating sparring culture, if a foul occurs, I kick you in the nuts. Okay, I don't let guys, right, say we're sparring, I kick you in the nuts, my partner's now down. I don't walk off the mat, get water, start talking to whoever else is sitting out. No, I have to stand 5 feet away on the opposite end, and I have to sit there. That's like
Yeah.
a rule, because that's what you do, right?
Because that's the nature of the fight.
Yeah, that's what happens in a fight. The round will resume, and you have to deal with that.
The thing I will tell you also is that I feel like you as a fighter, when you start to protest everything to the referee or to the corner or to the crowd,
Mm-hmm.
it just takes you out of your game, man. You know, if you feel like you didn't clip them in the groin, you arguing with the crowd and the other corner and the other fighter verbally is not going to win you any fights, my dude.
So I'll tell you where this comes from for me and why it's so valuable and why I teach it the way I teach it and why I'm aware of it. I played rugby, and there's a lot of rules in rugby, and I was a captain when I played. And on the field of rugby, there's one referee the entire time. It's 15 players on one side, 15 on the other, and only one person is allowed to talk to the referee.
Okay.
You will never win an argument with a ref, ever. If you guys ever watch rugby players talk to refs, it's a gentleman's game. It's a linguistics approach of trying to sway the ref to your side based on your opinions without offending him.
Okay.
It's very odd. It's very British. So I learned in the game of rugby, it's so useless to argue, accept the fate that has come upon you on the decision. What is your response to it? How do you turn this into a favorable?
Fair.
So, again, in the fighting, we only have so much time. And if I'm over here arguing with a ref, if I'm trying to get the officials or the crowd involved on something that is prohibiting from fight, we're here to fight. So, follow the rules, do the right things, don't hurt yourself. Perfect example. I had a fighter of mine. He was blessed with that right hand. Blessed with the right hand, drops everyone with it. We were in a tournament. First punch he lands, the kid floors. Boom. He does not go to the neutral corner. He jumps up. He starts cheering. He's running around. We're screaming for him to go to the neutral corner. Everyone's screaming for it. Finally, the ref starts counting. The guy magically pops up.
Well, he's had a lot of time to recover.
Had like 20, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
We lose a decision. If he had just immediately gone to neutral corner,
might have been the fight.
That could have been the fight, or the next exchange.
He couldn't have finished him. Yeah.
And it's just one of the. And
shame.
Guess what? He had that powerful right hand. He doesn't have a great gas tank, and because he was running and cheering and screaming,
he burned a lot of gas.
All out.
Burned a lot of gas in that celebration.
Couldn't check a kick after that. Looking at you, Chris.
Oh, shots fired. Hey, what do you think about strategies on fighting in the AM versus fighting in the PM? I bring this up for two reasons. One, obviously, tournament-style fighting, typically, you have AM fights and you have PM fights. So you might be fighting at 10 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., or you could be fighting at 9 p.m. Those are both possible in a tournament. And the second point that I would say is that increasingly we're seeing fights that are in Abu Dhabi. We're seeing when they did Fight Island, the early preams, so the earliest fights, were fighting starting at 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
The main events in Abu Dhabi on Fight Island were starting at 6 a.m. Their time. So do you feel like there's any thoughts or strategies that you have about fighting in AM versus fighting in the PM?
Yeah, 100%. Probably should train at those times.
Okay.
Again, visualization, simulation, that's a big part of training, especially at the highest levels when we're talking about just like having those tiniest of advantages. I think something like if I'm fighting roughly at 10 p.m., my session shouldn't be all morning sessions. I should have some late night sessions.
You should have 10 p.m. sessions.
Yeah, there should be some times where you're working that late. Same thing if you have a competition that's going to be in the morning. Not every session needs to be a morning session, but you need to make sure your body's used to working at that time.
Can you get up at 8, have a healthy breakfast, and can you spar at 11?
Yeah.
Right? Like, can you do that? Can you go for a run before that, you know?
And one thing, we just had Becco fight, so part of his homework from this experience is I want you to write out what you did, what worked for you, what didn't, what things you could have done better as far as scheduling goes. Getting used to a tournament out of town, how was traveling with your family?
Was this Becca's first tournament out of town?
Yeah. So, again, everyone's different. Some people love traveling with their family. Some people rather have just taken a plane.
One of the things that I say so often as a fighter is that when you're building that career as an amateur, you have to learn how to fight at home. You have to learn how to fight away. You have to learn how to fight traveling. You have to learn how to fight traveling in a car versus flying.
Yeah.
And those are the things, even as an early pro, Because even in Orlando, where there are a lot of fights, the likelihood that you're going to be able to fight all of your amateur fights in Orlando and then fight all of your pro fights in Orlando, very thin.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to be a Muay Thai or a kickboxer.
And also, it's not wise. Like you said, you want to experience all of it before you go pro. That way, when you go pro, it's not new to you. There's going to be some new experiences as you're a pro for sure, obviously, but you want to try to check as many boxes before you get there.
Absolutely. So you really think there is a lot of value in varying your training sessions?
Yeah,
kind of
100%.
I remember the first time I thought about this, I was watching like a documentary, and it was about, I want to say it was about Rich Franklin. You remember him? He was
great
until fighter, and now he's and now he does commentary.
Yeah,
he does commentary for one championship.
He's also one of their talent scouts.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. And he had a whole thing where he didn't wake up until like 1 or 2 in the afternoon in the documentary, because he was by this time he was fighting kind of like main event fights. So he wasn't fighting until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, a little bit later. He was living in Vegas, having fights in Vegas.
I mean, some of those guys fight at 1 a.m.
Yeah. You know, so it was late, and he only trained kind of in the evening because he felt like he wanted to be, learn how to be optimally awake and aware in that time frame. So I think with the tournament, that is an interesting thing, because most local regional events are typically always at night.
Yeah.
And tournaments, usually there's an AM component, so that's something too that is, I think, different about tournament style fighting.
Yeah. And like you said too, at the highest levels, they still put fighters on odd time frames to benefit on a global scale of viewing, right?
Yeah.
You obviously want the westernized because they have the money for the most part, so you do it where
it makes sense for everybody.
Everyone can watch, yeah.
It does seem like no one is very interested in watching fight replay.
Yeah.
So there were some times where there was fights. Now we're seeing UFC fights sometimes like 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday or something.
Well, the one Friday night fights, as they call it, is Friday morning for us. It's 8:30 a.m.
Yeah.
I watch it because I have Friday mornings off. But I know most people work and they can't catch it live.
I think that is the nature of the game, is that because we are a global sport, you have to be aware of all that. So something that I've been talking about a lot this weekend is staff training, and you've delved for the last 2 years now into being a promoter and producing Point Muay Thai events, and essentially training judges and referees. How important do you feel it is for your judges and referees to be well trained?
It's just as important as a fighter to be well trained.
Okay.
These are all tasks. All these positions, they all have jobs to do. And just like any job, you don't want a bad server, you don't want a bad cook. You want to make sure those dishes are getting clean. Yeah. So you want to make sure everyone's trained and up to standard and it's consistent. So training is just as important as a fighter getting trained.
I feel like one of the things that I don't enjoy about a lot of organizations, and I think this is more so the case on the regional level, is that you have these events where maybe the judges, they're not really active in our sport. You even see that obviously at the pro level, where you have people that, yes, they judge fights, but they're not training, they're not involved in the sport. And for me, I think that we need to have a call for more education.
Yeah.
And
that's a big part why we do this podcast. That's probably our biggest message
education.
There's information out there that we don't have that is super beneficial.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons that we want to have guests on the podcast, because we want to learn from them as much as we want them to teach other people the things that they know. And why I think this, we're trying to be very selective about who we have on the show, because we want to get people on here that we consider to be, experts that know more than we do about a subject matter, that can educate us and educate our listeners. You know? So I really would like to see more officials be, going. We have annual trainings, like IKF does an annual training every year. I really wish we could get more people
And I love this, like,
to sign up for that.
You know, I've coached for 10, 11, 12 years now, and one thing that you always consider when you're putting a fighter on a show is, like, what is their history with the officials?
Sure.
Who's going to be reffing? Who's going to be judging? Who are those that are surrounding the ringside? And I really, like, here with the IKF, obviously I work with the IKF, so I knew this going into it. But as a coach, I'm very comfortable putting a fighter in there because I know they're going to get a good ref. The ref's going to have good rules. If the ref is messing up in some form or fashion, the ringside officials are good at correcting them.
Yeah.
There's that culture of, like, do what's right and what's safe for the fighters. And then the judges, I think, get it right.
Yeah, I feel
pretty
like
much every time.
And obviously, I'm kind of tooting my own horn here, but what I would say is that I think that the nice thing about the IKF is that all of the officials are involved in the sport.
Yeah.
Not just from a judging, not just from a refereeing. Most of them are coaches. Most of them are they own martial arts businesses. They have been involved in the sport for a lifetime. So when you get judges judging or referees refereeing, typically you're getting very high quality judges.
Yeah.
And it's the same judges at many of our events. So they know Muay Thai, they know kickboxing, they're involved in the sport, and they know how to judge it.
Yeah.
A lot of time when you go to the regional shows, it's not always the case. You know, you have sometimes you have people judging that maybe they know one aspect of MMA and they're judging a kickboxing fight, but they don't know anything about kickboxing.
Right. Yeah, it's super common. It's one of my pet peeves.
That was on our list. Yeah. All right. Fair. So if you're listening, that is a call for more education, right?
Yeah. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that. But
we probably will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, there's two sides to every coin. Unfortunately, the way it is now for a lot of the education, the individual has to go out and seek it. Like yourself, you attend these seminars, right?
Yeah.
You have to travel.
Yeah,
You
I
pay
for them. Yeah.
You work your schedule around them. I don't know if it's the most cost-effective thing, if it's a profit thing. A traveling seminar of some sort, just like like they'll do like a 10th Planet team tour where a group of coaches like do seminars across a span of time.
Yeah. I wish that they would do, like, we've had very few. So I have become more involved in the official side of the sport over the last 2 years. I have traveled to multiple states outside of Florida to get further education. I think that is crazy when you think about the fact that Florida is such a large state and there has been very little official level training in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
And I'm really hoping that within the next year or two, we're able to change that. We're able to make steps to change that.
Yeah, for sure.
But there needs to be more education, and the certifying bodies need to be figuring out a way to provide, more education. And I think coaches should go to that as well. Coaches should go to these events and see, well, how does a judge? How does an official? I think that's something that you and I talked about the other day. One of the big things that I didn't put in my show notes, but I want to mention right now, and we're going to kind of segue into talking about cornering a little bit. There's a lot of corners that don't understand the point system. They don't understand knockdowns. They don't understand, what a 7-10 round is or what an 8-10 round is. They don't understand that, let's say, if your fighter got 8 counted in the first round, they were behind, and then they got an 8 count. That is a 10-8 round for the other corner.
Yeah.
It is going to be very hard for your fighter to win by decision now.
Yeah.
So I have seen some coaches that they get the first round, they get an 8-10 round. and then they go to, they go to decision. So their fighter came back and they went to decision, and then they want to see the scorecard because they don't understand how they lost.
Mhm.
Well, if I get a 10-8 in the first round, and then I come back and I win the next 2 rounds, 10-9, right? I have 28 points.
Yeah.
But my opponent also has 28 points.
Mhm.
And that's me winning the next 2 rounds.
Yeah.
You have to understand these things as a coach.
Yeah.
You have to understand how important knockdowns are.
Yeah.
We did a whole episode on finishing the fight,
Just watch it.
right? We did a whole episode on, judging criteria.
And we talked about numbers pretty in depth.
In depth. You guys, as a corner, you have to understand what a 10-round, 10-point must system is.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand that a 10-9 is the most common round. You have to understand that if you got if your fighter got 8 counted, that's a problem. And you as the winning coach, if you're the coach that's ahead, you also have to know going in, like, oh, I had my opponent had a, we gave this guy an 8 count in the first round. We gave this guy an 8 count in the second round. We don't need to do anything crazy in the third round.
Yeah.
Because we are way ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I have, a standard viewpoint on this. Again, we don't want to go into the whole shebang of it, but the idea is you're winning by points, right? It's a point system, 10-point must system for every round. So at best 30-27, the most common score,
Sure.
right? You're winning by 3 points. So that's 1 point per round. So we're talking soccer scores, right?
Yeah.
So you're not really scoring a ton. This isn't like a 38 to 14.
This isn't basketball.
Yeah, exactly. So when it's a game like that, how valuable is 2 points per round?
Sure.
If you got a 3-point round,
Sure.
you're
so far ahead.
You're so far ahead.
So far ahead.
That you could, in one way, you really take the foot off the pedal, just play defense, and win. Now, people
no one's gonna want to see that.
No one's gonna want to see that, and
course.
fighters aren't gonna fight that way. And realistically, if you got 10-7 one round, you're probably on your way out.
Yeah, you should finish the fight the next round.
So our goal for my fighters, when we talk about kickboxing, Muay Thai, where they do score knockdown 10-8s, MMA, it's different. MMA, they really like to hold those 10-8 rounds close. I wish that changed a little bit. But if there's a knockdown, it's an automatic 10-8 round.
Yes.
If there's 2 knockdowns, automatic 10-7.
There's
a little leeway if the fighter was dominating the round and then got knocked down, but they're still losing that round. 10-9 in that instance. So your goal should be a knockdown or 2 per round.
Yeah.
That's my fighter's goal.
If you could, in Muay Thai, if you could knock down the opponent in every round, you won the fight.
Yeah.
There should be no way for you to, because with an 8 count in a round, the other person automatically won that round. Now, if the other fighter comes back and hits me with an 8 count in the same round,
now it's tough.
Now we're even. We just reset. Reset.
Yeah, it's a 10-9 one way.
Yeah. Now we reset.
Yeah, exactly. And again, so your strategy should be how against this opponent do I score a 10-8 round? How do I score a knockdown?
How do I get a dominant round?
And so you find those paths to get the knockdown. For instance, Becco's fight. Say his opponent was able to get up on the count. Now we have that happened in 18 seconds. Now we have a minute and 40 seconds left.
Finish the fight.
We could put a lot more pressure on the fighter, or we could take the gas off the pedal and control and protect our points. We're gonna go for the finish.
Yeah,
that's
Muay Thai is knockout.
Yeah, let's get a second knockdown. So in the process of scoring these knockdowns to get these 10-8, 10-7 rounds, you're gonna get the knockout. You're gonna get the TKO.
Yeah,
but that's the goal. You should be getting a knockdown or 2 per round.
And
then it's easy.
If you can't do that, let's get some sweeps.
And then we take out judges' opinions.
Yeah.
If you make it the mandatory 10-8, the mandatory 10-7, judges' opinions are out the window now.
As a coach, as a corner, do you ice your fighters?
Mm-mm.
No.
I'm lazy. No, I'm joking. That's not why I don't ice them.
Do you want to tell us your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll tell you my thoughts on this. I don't think there's been any strong evidence to show that it's like a benefit physically. And then 2, you never train that way. When you're in the gym, you don't go in between rounds of whatever drilling, sparring, pad holding you're doing. You don't go sit on a stool.
You don't ice them.
3 people come and give you a nice little massage with an ice pack, and they got it on your neck, your head, your chest. They're telling you to breathe.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, you're by yourself. If you got a coach who's a little more active, they're talking to you in between rounds.
Yeah.
They're telling you to breathe, but you really don't have the stool. You don't do any of these things.
Yeah.
So my corner, if you look at it, is pretty much my fighter stands, unless they tell me they like to sit, but most don't. They want to stand. Cool. That's what I prefer. And I'm just going to talk to you. And now the next round's up.
Yeah.
You give them the water. Water helps sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'm very, very low maintenance in the corner. Now, do I think that's the best thing? No. I would like a good second who can maybe massage a leg or two if needed.
I actually looked this one up, and
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I actually did a little research here. And then I actually have a piece of this that I think is fun as well. But there is a study about icing, and it is entitled The Effects of Intermittent Neck Cooling During Repeated Bouts of High-Intensity Exercise. Okay, this is research out of Cal State Fullerton, and that was performed by Dr. Andy Galpin. I actually met Andy Galpin at the UFCPI a couple years ago. He's a young cat. He's a young guy. He's like probably, maybe he's in his 30s. He's a cool guy. He's a nice guy. And he has done a lot of research now on MMA at Cal State Fullerton. He did this study in 2016. And the purpose of his study was I wrote this down, looked at the influence of intermittent neck cooling during exercise bouts to mimic combat sports competition.
Okay.
Right? So essentially he's trying to figure out, does icing your neck, does cooling your neck help in your recovery? Okay. This is how they did the study. They had 3 different conditions. Okay. So in a scientific experience, the experiment is considered a condition. The first condition was they did nothing for the athlete. The second condition was that they iced their necks. And the third condition was that they sprayed menthol spray on the back of their necks. Okay. So all of them did all 3 conditions. Okay. So every one of the athletes did all 3 things over a period of time, allowed them to recover. And then they looked at what the results were. Okay. This is what the experiment was. All of the athletes did a warm-up. Then they got onto a cycle, cycle ergometer is what it's called, and they rode the bike for 5 minutes. It was 20 seconds of all-out max effort and then 15 seconds of passive effort.
Kind of like a Tabata.
Yeah, exactly. So they would go high intensity for 20 seconds, and then for 15 seconds they would basically just kind of pedal a little bit.
Yeah.
If they just kind of, like slowed down, there was no limit to how slow they could go.
Gotcha.
And then they would have to, after 15 seconds, they have to
Maximum
go
effort.
maximal effort. And they did that for 5 minutes. Then they would have a 1 minute rest period. So obviously, what are they trying to simulate?
They're simulating a fight.
An MMA pro
Explosive,
fight, right?
Explosive,
Yeah.
recover.
So then during the rest period, they would get either the back of their neck iced for the first one or the second one or the third one. And then they would then go into the second round. They would do the exact same thing on the cycle. They would then get their second rest period where if they got iced in the first one, they would get iced again, obviously. And then for the third round, what they would do is they would do an all-out single bout to exhaustion is what they called it.
Fun.
Where they had to be at 30%, which is not super high, 30% of their peak power, and they had to go for as long as they could.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically they were trying to simulate a 3-round fight where they actually finished the opponent in the third round, basically.
Gotcha.
So they did it, all of the athletes did it one time with ice all the way through, one time with cooling mint on the back of their neck, like a menthol.
Yeah.
And the third time, or one of the times, they did it with nothing.
Right.
And this is what the research.
Which is what I make my fighters do.
Which is what you're making your fighters do, because you're a jerk. No. Obviously, they tracked skin temperature.
Okay.
So what was the temperature on their core? What was their temperature on the back of their neck, their forehead, their legs?
Yeah.
They tracked gas exchange. How much CO2 are they getting rid of versus how much oxygen are they breathing in?
Mm-hmm.
Heart rate. And then they tracked two kind of like psychological things. One is what's called RPE, which is the rating of perceived exertion. How tired are you? You give me a number typically between like 1 and 8. And the other one was thermal sensation. So they basically asked, are you hot?
I see.
Right? Or do you feel hot right now?
Yeah.
Here are the results. Pretty simple. Skin temperature changed only on the neck for the ice only.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't change for the other two. And it only changed during the first rest period. When they iced the neck for the second rest period, there was no skin temperature change. Their thought process was the athlete had gotten so hot by the end of the second round, it
would take too long
to cool their skin back
Gotcha.
down. So that what we in science we call that diminished over time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gas exchange did not change regardless of the condition. So
Yeah.
they breathed in the same amount of oxygen, they expelled the same amount of CO2. Thermal sensation did change. The athletes that said that they were, they felt cooler were the ones that were being iced.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that had the menthol spray said that they felt somewhat cooler, but it wasn't considered significant where the ice was. The big thing here is going to be what's called, again, rating of perceived exertion, which is RPE. All of the conditions, they reported feeling the same after the first round.
Yeah.
So when they went into the second, they all felt exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
The ice did show to be statistically significant after the second round. So after the second round, when they got their second rest period, the athletes that got iced did say that they felt that they were less exerted going into the third round.
Mm-hmm.
This does suggest that like the perception of being colder exists without you actually physically being colder.
Yeah.
Because their skin temperature had not changed.
Mm-hmm.
However, with all of the conditions, their time to exhaustion in the third round remained the same.
Yeah.
So if subject one and all three of them could only pedal for X amount of minutes in the third round, regardless of whether or not they were iced or not.
So I'm right. I'm right.
So that does suggest that there is no real benefit to icing that we currently see in research.
Yeah.
Obviously, the researchers did say that they haven't looked at the physiological and psychological effects of icing, and there's been no data where they've looked at actual fights
Mm-hmm.
where the guys that get iced win more, lose more, whatever.
I was gonna say, I love this because it kind of does reinforce what I believe, that it's more of like it's a feeling thing than a fact thing. But imagine doing that study, but like with sparring instead of on the bike.
Yeah.
I don't think they would quickly go, who gives a shit about the ice? I have to fight this guy.
Yeah. we actually, okay, so here's my fun fact on this one. I have when I was working on my master's degree at UCF in human mechanics, my professor, Dr. Fukuda, is a judo guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big combat sports guy. He read this study, and we reproduced it in the lab.
Oh, wow.
So we did this exact study in the lab. We didn't publish it, but we did it as like as a class. We all came in and just did it.
Wow.
So we had subjects from the class, students that volunteered. We didn't use a cyclogometer. We actually used a rower.
Okay.
So what they would do is they would do 20 seconds of all-out rowing, and then they would just sit on the rower for 15 seconds.
Mm.
And same protocol and everything. But we also took core temperature, where this study did not take core temperature. We still took skin temperature, but we also took core temperature. So I can tell you that in that non-published, just reproduction, core temperature was also not affected by icing. So your core temperature remained exactly the same. And all of our subjects had the exact same results.
Yeah.
They all said that they felt better being iced, but none of them were able to perform better on a rower either.
So this is something I say with my fighters, and they love this, the ones who stick around. The ones who don't stick around, I can usually tell by their experience. I often at the beginning of a session, I'll ask my fighter, how do they feel? And when they first work with me, I will let them express their feelings. And then eventually, part of the system is I go, Paul, how do you feel today? It doesn't matter how you feel. I always interrupt them, and I do that often. I make sure to make a point because feelings don't win fights. Actions do.
Yeah.
So if you're needing a certain feeling to win, you're already behind the 8 ball.
This is why
you're not doing
I'm
well.
really not a fan of I'm really not a fan of people that have to wear a certain outfit or
they have
some ritual or something they have to do, because if we can't reproduce that every single time, then this is going to be a real fucking
It's a
problem.
crutch, and that crutch is
a crutch. It's a crutch. I'll tell you another thing. I brought this up the other day. If your plan is to fight as a pro MMA fighter, I'm just going to say this very blanket, and you're doing anything as an amateur that you would not be allowed to do as a pro, stop now. That's a bad idea, because when you get to the pro level, you will not be able to do that.
Yeah.
And the one that I can give you, which a lot of people I think are thinking of really bad things, I'm going to give you an example of something that I think is not that bad. If you are someone that likes to do an IV bag for rehydration.
Yes.
And we see this is a big thing right now in the United States, where you'll see like hangover cure IV bags. If you do a weight cut, a really serious weight cut where you're dehydrating yourself, and then you weigh in, and then you IV bag yourself for rehydration, right? You go to like an IV bag place and you pay $100 or whatever, and you do that. I bet you feel a lot better. The problem is that at the professional level in the UFC, the tested organizations, they do not allow.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of them that don't.
IV bag rehydration. Likewise, if you plan on fighting in one championship and you're doing a lot of serious weight cutting, hey man, one championship's not going to allow you to get away with that.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that you're developing strategies as an amateur that you will be able to carry along with you to the pro level.
Yeah. Yeah, the dehydration test. I've seen things where, there's ways around it.
There's ways around everything, sure.
Right. But if you're not practicing those things, or you're not aware of the consequences, you don't know how to avoid the consequences, that's a big issue. I agree with that. That's actually a really good point. So the IV bag is an interesting one, because I've had fighters who, they do a big weight cut, they want the IV.
Yeah.
It's not illegal at your level.
Sure, but what happens
not?
if you develop a psychological belief in, like, I have to have this, and you've done the IV bag 3 or 4 times, so then your body's also physiologically used to, hey, we don't need to fucking do anything. We're going to get IV bag tomorrow. We'll be okay. Like, what are the 3 things when I dehydrate a fighter for a weight cut, which I have done a lot of times, I do understand
bad man.
I understand that weight cutting is a part of the sport, and you have to do it from an intellectual standpoint. I give my fighters water when we start to rehydrate after making weight, and I give them 3 other things, 3 food items. Do you want to guess what those food items are?
No, I don't.
No, okay.
It's not cheese, is
I'm
it?
tell you. No, it's definitely
not pocket cheese.
It is no dairy.
Okay.
No dairy.
That's on the list.
This is big. This is big. No dairy after a big weight cut. It's not good. You're going to poo yourself.
You mean I shouldn't get a bunch of pasta at Olive Garden?
Well, I'm not against the pasta.
Give me the
I'm not against
Parmesan.
the pasta, but this is avoid the cheese. No alcohol. Okay. These are the 3 things that you need in
no
your body.
celebratory beer for the weight cut?
I'm not a fan of anything that's going to dehydrate you more. These are the 3 things that I really, really encourage fighters to eat immediately after making weight. And this is going to sound kind of crazy. First one, gummy bears. All right. I know that sounds wild, but I want some sugars. I want my fighter to get some sugars back in their system. They've probably been cutting carbs.
Yeah.
Right. And the simplest way for me to start to get some sugars, reintroduce some sugars, is some gummy bears.
Mm-hmm.
The next really, really big thing that I want is salts.
Yeah.
And I want quick, simple salts. Sometimes I'll have my guys start eating like saltine crackers or other, like some type of chip.
Yeah.
Because I got to get some salt back in their system, right? And now you're hearing sugar, you're hearing salt. Obviously, I like bananas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, why? Potassium.
Sure.
All right. Now, the problem with bananas that you might run into, though, and I've had this with fighters, is one banana's good. 4 or 5 bananas, you're not going to go to the bathroom, okay? Because you're going to clog that system up, okay? And the last thing that I'm a big, big fan of is dark chocolate.
Yeah.
Why? It's got magnesium in it, okay? What are the things that you need when rehydrating? You need water and you need electrolytes. What are electrolytes? Because people kind of blanket throw that word out. Well, it's salt, magnesium, and potassium.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the things that you need to get back in your system. Notice I didn't say dairy.
Yeah.
Notice I didn't say alcohol. You don't really need proteins. Most people that are weight cutting are still including meats in their weight cut.
Yeah.
You need carbohydrates and you need electrolytes. I'm not a huge fan of you doing the drinks, like the IV liquid IVs and stuff like that. I do give my fighters Pedialyte. I like Pedialyte. But I really want them to start nibbling on foods.
Yeah.
Because they got to regain their weight. They got to regain their strength, right? Last thing that I wanted to talk about with you today, Rich, is, and I think that I don't want to say that I'm going to nag fighters on this, but good fitting and correct equipment.
This is huge.
When you go to a tournament, an IKF tournament, when you go to, these things, typically, not all of them, some are better than others, but most of them, you are required to supply your own headgear.
Yeah.
You are required to supply your own mouthpiece, and you are required to supply your own shin guards. Now, if you're fighting full rules Muay Thai that includes elbows, you're required to supply your own elbow pads. I cannot express this to you enough.
Are you required to provide your own cup?
You're also required to provide your own cup. Rich, more important than providing your own cup, you're required to provide the thing that your cup goes into.
Oh.
Okay, because you can't just take a plastic cup and shove it in your underwear.
That doesn't work.
No, that's not going to stay.
I don't wear a cup, so I don't know.
These are the things that we see over and over and over again in tournaments. Guys that have not fit their headgear. It's constantly coming off. It's not fitting on their head. Guys that their cup falls out of the bottom of their pants. Look, if you lose your cup repeatedly in a fight, the referee can end the fight. They can say that you lost the fight. You're not able to continue. Likewise, if you don't have an appropriately fitting mouthpiece, buy an appropriately fitting mouthpiece. I was refereeing a fight this weekend, and the guy made this sound like he was going to throw up.
Oh,
he had just gotten hit hard.
I watched that fight. I think I judged it.
And he made this sound like he was going to throw up. I started looking at this guy because if you throw up,
you're out.
The fight's over. And then he made the sound again. And when he made the sound again, I almost ended it.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, if I want to be honest with you, I know this maybe sounds not great. I'd like to end the fight before you throw up on me. Yeah. Opposed to after you throwing up on me.
Plus, it's a long weekend of fights. We don't want a vomit stain.
Yeah, I don't want throw up all over the ring.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you know how long it's going to take to clean that up? So, like, this guy's making that sound, and then he spit his mouthpiece out of his mouth. And I went to pick his mouthpiece up, and the strategy or the rule with kickboxing, Muay Thai, because they have gloves on, is you take the mouthpiece to the corner. The corner is supposed to clean it with water
Yeah.
and then put it back in the fighter's mouth. Different with MMA, because with MMA, you just give it back to the fighter because they can move their fingers.
Mm-hmm.
But with boxing, because they can't do that, you give it to the corner. When I picked up this guy's mouthpiece, it looked like, it was chewed up, it was broken, it was falling apart, and I realized that he wasn't going to throw up. He was essentially just gagging
On his own mouth.
on how bad his mouthpiece was in his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise, I can't tell you how often I see fighters that are chewing on their mouthpiece because it doesn't fit in their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
In no way is this a sponsored ad. In no way is this a sponsored ad. Impact custom mouth guard. Impact custom mouth guards. All right, guys. Seriously, it's like $100. My mouth guard fits in my mouth so tightly that I could literally do this podcast and I would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I have to pull the thing out of my mouth to get it out of my mouth. It's $100. Use our code Combat Theory. You get even more of a discount. That thing lasts forever.
Yeah.
Listen, I can't tell you how often I have to warn fighters. Do you know that if your mouthpiece comes out of your mouth and you're a fighter, you could get 8 counted for that?
Yep.
We just talked about how important it is not to get 8 count.
Yeah.
Like,
You just lost 2 points.
what are you doing, dude?
Yeah, I can't stress this enough. Again, as you may tell if you've listened to this point, I take every little aspect of fighting and you try to address it during training. So something like if you're not training with your headgear, even if it's just drills or,
Sure.
Of course you should be sparring with it. If you don't have that and you wait until fight day to experience it, you're not going to be thinking about the fight as much. It's just one extra distraction.
I think I told you this earlier today. When I was running a big fight team and we were going to a tournament, the entire week before, my team, everyone that was competing, had to wear all of their gear.
Mm-hmm.
Cup, shin guards, headgear, everything you're going to wear. And we would see throughout the week, your headgear's, it needs to be taped in better. Or, you know what, those shin guards are not going to work. There was a guy this weekend that kept complaining that the ring was slippery.
Yeah.
The ring wasn't slippery. The bottom of his shin guard, material was slippery.
Mm-hmm.
And he was slipping around on that. He had probably never worn those before.
Right. They're probably new.
They
They
were
got them
new.
for the tournament.
Yeah, you need to scuff those things up, man. You have to learn how to use your gear appropriately.
I mean, the big one for me is the elbow pads.
Yes.
And there's so many different brands of elbow pad, and everyone's different. So, you might have, big forearm, big bicep.
Yeah.
You might be like me, need a skinnier one. That's, again, you're in a Muay Thai fight. Every time you throw an elbow, your pad comes off.
Yeah.
So that's 2 or 3 seconds of the ref calling time. Another 2 or 3 seconds for him to take you to the corner. Now 2 or 3 seconds for your coach to fix it. You just wasted 10 seconds. There's 120 seconds in the fight.
Losing momentum.
Yeah.
You're constantly losing momentum.
And you're getting distracted. You're not setting the guy up.
Likewise, your elbow pads are so tight that they're cutting off the circulation to your arms.
Yeah.
And your arms start to feel horrible. And by the way, in a tournament, you might be wearing those elbow pads for 30, 40 minutes before you get in the ring.
Yeah.
Make sure your gear fits appropriately. It's trained. Make sure the gear that you're going to wear into the ring is allowed by the rules.
Yeah.
Right? Let's think this through a little bit, guys. I can't express this to you enough. You have to wear appropriate fitting gear, and you have to make sure that you wear it for at least sparring, hopefully drilling, at least a week or 2 before your fight.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you're going to wear you have a beautiful pair of fight shorts with all of your sponsors on there for your fight, please make sure that you try that thing on, move your legs, make sure you can throw kicks, go through a warm-up with it, make sure that when the thing gets wet, it's not see-through. You know what I'm saying? These are the things that you guys need to make sure that your gear is great. And I'll tell you another thing. If you're fighting amateur at a regional event, I would bring a set of your gear as well.
Yeah.
Because there's been plenty of times where my guys have gone to regional events and I didn't like something that fit the way it fit. And I said, hey, we have our own, we used to have to fight headgear in Florida. Hey, we have our own headgear. Can we wear that?
Yeah.
And they'd look at it. Oh, it's competition approved. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you can wear that. And my guy would come out with headgear that fit and was appropriate and stayed on their head.
And he's trained with it.
And it's comfortable.
One less thing to think about.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be psychologically taken out of a fight because I'm constantly upset that my headgear I can't see or my shin guards aren't fitting properly or I'm slipping around because I didn't test out my gear.
Mm-hmm.
Test out your gear, guys.
The less distractions, the better. And we see it in the point Muay Thai. I plan on making posts about this at some point to really promote the idea of this exactly as you're saying. Hand wraps too. A lot of guys they don't experience a proper cloth and tape hand wrap until their fight. I'm a big fan of at least 2 to 3 sessions before a fight.
Taping and gauzing hands.
We're gonna sit down. I'm gonna spend some time. I'll even practice a fast wrap because sometimes a fast show's happening. And you got to be ready.
Things happen.
Yeah,
things happen. I tell my guys all the time when it comes to fighting, it's a lot of hurry up, wait, hurry up, wait.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that. You have to just be kind of comfortable being uncomfortable and, like having redundancies and bringing the equipment. We decided to do this podcast from our hotel in Myrtle Beach, right? And this was the best view that we could find for the trip. But I brought extra cables. I brought extra mics. We have an extra mic stand. We have an extra mic. We have extra cables. Why? What if one of these things doesn't work?
Yeah.
I need to have the stuff to be successful, right? And I'm not gonna lie to you. When I packed all this stuff, I thought there's a lot of stuff to pack. But at the end of the day, you need to have your gear. You need to be ready to do the thing that it is that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I would hate to be a fighter, go to an event, and not feel comfortable in my gear.
Yeah.
Or I'm way ahead in a fight, and then we got to stop the fight. We got to slow the fight down to fix headgear.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I bought a mouthpiece for $14 or something, and it's a boil and bite mouthpiece. It doesn't fit me properly. I never want to wear it in training. And then leads to injuries in training.
Yeah.
And then when I'm fighting, that leads to problems as well.
Yeah. I mean, at the pro level, they require you to have 2 mouthpieces.
2 mouthpieces.
For the rare instance that you lose one. Because if you don't have the second one, the fight's over.
Yeah. I was watching a bare knuckle fight on pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
And bare knuckle's a little wild, admittedly. And the guy came out. He did not have a mouthpiece.
Mm.
And they literally were like, you need a mouthpiece. And somebody ran to the back and brought a bucket of other fighters' mouthpieces. And the guy tried on some mouthpieces.
I love this.
And then found one he felt fit well and put that thing in his mouth. No effing way.
Yeah.
Just spend the $100, my dude.
Yeah. Prepare, guys. Prepare
please.
My personal experience with that, it was probably my second or third fight, and I didn't bring my mouthpiece. Big whoopsie. Thankfully, someone at the venue had a unmolded mouthpiece.
Yeah.
So the venue we were at, they didn't have a way of boiling water, but the food truck outside did. Unfortunately, it wasn't a very strong boil. So so I had this very slightly molded,
somewhat melted.
It had and I just remember thinking, I have to finish this guy fast. Because this is not going to stay in my mouth.
Yeah.
I'm very particular on the type of mouth. I've been buying the same mouthpiece for a long time.
Yeah.
So during the fight, it went to decision, and I just remember thinking during the fight, I hate this mouthpiece. I'm distracted by my equipment.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking I need to press on the head, get back to my feet.
This is not where I want to be.
Yeah.
This is not where I want to be.
I'm thinking I don't want to spit my mouthpiece out again.
There's no reason for, maybe 20 years ago, when it was hard to get good equipment. But today, there's no reason
There's
why.
no excuse. Yeah.
There's so many vendors. There's so many different companies that sell so many different styles, you know. But when it does, like headgear, if you're fighting IKF or you're fighting a legitimate organization, go on the website and figure out what is allowed headgear-wise.
Yeah.
Right? Because go buy the right stuff.
That is the number one piece of equipment that will affect you the most.
Yes.
Especially if you're not used to it, and especially if it is prohibiting vision or the ability to stay in space.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, come on, dude.
Yeah, it's a really big deal. Again, we see it a lot at the Point Muay Thai shows, because for a lot of those guys, they are newer.
Yes.
And they don't have a lot of spar time in general.
A good pair of headgear at most costs $120.
120. If you're adding tax, maybe a little shipping.
Like, you buy that one time.
Mm-hmm.
You take care of it. That thing is going to last your entire career.
Same thing with the mouthpiece. We were talking about impact, and a lot of guys will say, I can go buy a $20 mouthpiece. Why would I buy a $100 mouthpiece? I lose my mouthpiece all the time. Well, it's because you're buying cheap ones, and you are used to this cheap quality. If you spent the $100, which is a great price on the type of custom mouthpiece you're getting, if you spend that $100, now you have a reason not to lose it.
Yeah.
You're like, that's a $100 mouthpiece I'm not trying to lose.
They also keep, on that note, I know that Impact keeps your mold.
Yeah.
I think you pay like $2 more or something, $2 or $3 more.
This is a great ad for these guys.
They keep the impression for years.
Mm-hmm.
So if you decide you don't like the style or you just lose your mouthpiece, you can go online and it costs less than it initially did now, and you can order another one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have all kinds of deals on there where if you want to order 2 mouthpieces, which is what you should do, that's cheaper than if buying a single one by itself.
Yeah.
There's all these kind of things. So like,
again, no excuses at this point,
No reason to do it, man.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, Rich, I always, I think this is episode 5 now for this season. Our first episode ever away. Hopefully it later people will say this is a green screen. It's not. This is a real door.
That's a real hotel behind us.
It's a real hotel. Hopefully everything sounds great. But thank you guys so very much. Rich, thank you as always.
Thank you, Paul.
And hopefully we will be back in just 2 weeks, as our goal is always having a new episode for you on the first and third Tuesday of the month. Thank you guys so much. Have a beautiful day.